of what they are saying, their preoccupations, their perceptions, all of it suddenly falls that much more into place. And at last she answers them. I am here. I am here for you. Chapter 6.5. Things fall apart. They gave him a ship suit. He could hardly present himself in his flimsy sleeping garb, open at the back when the tubes had gone in. For all he had already paraded his pock-marked old backside through half of the crew quarters before he boarded. The name on his new outfit was Mallory. Searching his fragmented memory, Holston had no idea who Mallory might have been, and did not want to think about whether there was even a Mallory anymore. Would he prefer to be wearing the clothes of the corpse, or those of someone who might any moment wake up and need them back? He asked after his own suit, but apparently it had been taken away and worn out long ago. When they were getting him clothes, he saw other people. This generation's engineers left him in one of the science rooms that had been converted into a dormitory. At least 40 people were crammed in there, the walls studded with hooks for hammocks that a few were still sleeping. They looked frightened and desolate, like refugees. He spoke with them. When they found out he was actually crew, they bombarded him with questions. They were insistent. They wanted to know what was going on. So did he, of course, but that answer did not satisfy them. For most of them, their last memory was of a poisoned, dying old Earth. Some even refused to believe how much time had gone by since they had closed their eyes in the suspension chambers that first time. Holston was appalled at how little some of these escapees had actually known about the endeavour they were embarking on. They were young. Most of the cargo would need to be young after all, to be able to start anew in whatever circumstances they were thawed out for. I'm just a classicist, Holston told them. In truth, there were 1,000 things he knew that would be relevant to their predicament, none of which he felt like talking about or thought would much reassure them. The most important question, that of their immediate future, he could not help with at all. Then the ersatz engineers came with the ship suit and led him off, against the complaints of the human cargo. He had his own questions then. He was feeling calm enough to deal with the answers. What will happen to them? The young woman who was leading him glanced grimly back the way they had come. Return to suspension as soon as chambers are available. And how long will that be? I don't know. How long's it been? He was picking up ample clues from her expression alone. The longest anyone has been out of suspension was 2 years. Holston took a deep breath. Let me guess, there are more and more you're having to thaw out, right? Cargo storage is deteriorating. We're doing all we can, she snapped defensively. Holston nodded to himself. I can't manage it. It's getting worse. So, where... Look! The woman rounded on him. Her badge said, Terrata. Another lost, dead name. I'm not here to answer your questions. I have other work to get to after this. Holston spread his hands appeasingly. Put yourself in my position. Friend, I have enough trouble just being in my own position. And what's so great about you, anyway? Why the special treatment? He nearly responded with, don't you know who I am? As though he was some grand celebrity. In the end, he just shrugged. I'm nobody. I'm just an old man. They passed a room of perhaps a score of children, a sight so unexpected that Holston stopped and stared and would not be moved on. They were aged around 8 or 9, sitting on the floor with pads in their hands, watching the screen. On the screen was Lane. Holston choked at seeing her there. There were other things too, 3-dimensional models, images of what might be the guild's schematics. They were being taught. These were engineers in training. Not Terrata tugged at his arm, but Holston took a step into the room. The students were nudging each other, whispering, staring at him, but he had eyes only for the screen. Lane was explaining some piece of work, demonstrating by example and expanded diagram how to enact some particular sort of repair. She was older on the screen. Not the chief engineer, not the warrior queen, just Lisa Lane, forever doing her best with the shoddy tools the universe gave her. Where do they... Holston gestured at the now faintly distracted children. Where did they come from? Friend, if you don't know that, then I'm not explaining it to you. Not Tirata told him acidly, and some of the kids smirked. No, seriously. There are children, of course, she told him sharply. What did you think? How else were we going to keep the work going? And the cargo? He asked her, because he was thinking about those people stuck outside suspension for months, for years. By then, she had managed to drag him away from the schoolroom, directing the students' attention back to the teaching display with a stern gesture. We have strict population controls, she told him, adding, we're on a ship, after all. A mantra. If we need fresh material from cargo, then we take it, but otherwise any excess production... And here her clipped, professional voice faltered just a little, touching on some personal pain so unexpectedly that Holston stumbled slightly in sympathy. Embryos are put on ice, to await future need, she finished, with a scowl at him to cover up her own awkwardness. It's easier to store an embryo before a certain point in its development than it is a full human being. Again, this sounded like some rote-learned dogma that she had grown up with. I'm sorry, We're here. They had reached communications. Until he actually stood there, he had not realised where they were going. But what? Just go in. Not Tirata gave him quite a hard shove, and then she walked away. For a long time, Holston stood outside the door to comms, obscurely fearful of crossing the threshold, until at last the hatch slid aside of its own accord, and he met the gaze of the woman inside. He had not known what to expect. He had thought there might be no living being at all, just a face on a screen that was perhaps something like Lane's death mask, perhaps with taints inherited from Guyon and Avrana Kern, and who knew what else that was rattling about in the system. If not that, then he had been terrified that what would meet his gaze might be something like Guyon had become, a withered lich that had once been human, sustained by and inseparable from the mechanism itself, harbouring dreams of immortality in its curdling skull. To see the woman he had known curtailed to that would have been bad. Worse would be for the door to open and show him someone else entirely. But this was Lane. Issa Lane. She was older, of course. She must have been 15 years his senior by now, a veteran of the long battle against entropy and hostile computer intrusion that she'd been fighting on and off since they last parted. 15 more years would have been almost nothing to the people of the old empire. All the myths of that elder age confirmed that the ancients had lived far longer than a natural human span. In these reduced days, however, made Lane old. Not ancient, not decrepit, not yet. She was a working woman in the last days of her strength, staring down time's inevitable slope which would rob her of her ability to piecemeal with every step. She was heavier than she had been, and her face was written over in that universal human language of hardship and care. Her hair was grey, long, tied back in a severe bun. He had never seen her with long hair before. She was Lane, though, a woman he had seen evolve in snapshot over the course of so short a time for him, but a lifetime for her. He felt an upsurge of feeling in just looking at her face, the lines and weathering doing their best to hide her character. Look at you, old man, she said faintly. She seemed as affected by his years as he was by hers. She was wearing a ship's suit with the name ripped off, a garment fraying at the elbows, patched at the knees. The ragged remains of another suit hung about her shoulders, reduced to something like a shawl, which she fingered thoughtfully while looking at him. Holston stepped inside, looking at comms, noting 2 dark panels and one that had detected that the rest of the station seemed to be operational. Looking busy. A nameless expression flickered across her face. That's it, is it? All this time, and it's still the old flip remarks. He gave her a level look. First of all, it's not time. Secondly, it was always you ready for the level, not me. He was smiling as he said it, because that kind of banter he was used to from her was something he dearly wanted to hear just now. but she just stared at him as though he was a ghost. "You haven't changed." And as she said it, it was plain she knew how fatuous a remark it was, but still something she needed to know. Holston Mason, historian, had now outlived history. Here he was, bumbling through time and space, making mistakes and being ineffectual, the one stable point in moving universe. Come on. Just come here. He didn't expect the tears, not from her. He didn't expect the fierce strength of her arms as she held him to her, the shaking of her shoulders as she fought against herself. She held him out at arm's length, and he was struck with how alien the situation would be. How normal for him to meet an old friend and find her changed and aged, and search the lines of her face for the woman she had been. How wrenching it must be for her to try and find the older man he might one day become, his untouched future. Yes, I've been busy. Everyone's been busy. You've no idea how much. Tell me. What? Tell me what's going on. Please, somebody tell me something, at least. She lowered herself carefully to what had once been Julian's seat, gesturing to another for him. What did you report? You're the new commander? Scholar doesn't like being kept in the dark. And that sounded so like the old that he smiled. The scholar does not. Seriously, of all the people left on the ship, it's you I trust. But Laura, I don't know what you're doing with the ship. I don't know what you're doing with these people. You think I've gone like him? Then you to name any names there. Well, I wondered. Guyon fucked over the computer, she spat out. All his upload nonsense. It went just about like I said it would. Every time he tried to grow in there, it shut off more of the good systems. I mean, a human mind has a fuckload of data. And there were 4 or 5 separate, incomplete copies fighting for space in there. So I set to work trying to contain them. Trying to keep the essentials running. Keeping the cargo cold, stopping the reactor getting too hot. You remember, that was the plan when you went under. It seemed like a good plan. I remember you said you'd be going into some steps. That was the plan. Only there were complications. I didn't have to find cargo space. Really, it was crazy. Cops kept breaking on the ground and up and putting them on ice. And by then, some of them were working with my people and keeping a lid on the hardware. And Guyon, the fucking Guyon archipelago strung out through the system, kept getting out, trying to copy us, eating up even more space. Purged, isolated, and set packs of viruses on the house. It was seriously entrenched by them. And when my team was up and running and I had faith in them, I went under like I said I would. I set myself away from them. Still. Yeah, still clinging on by his electronic fucking fingernails. I can still find all sorts of other shit going on too. Holston had always found the names really attractive. Now, her old woman, it was as though she had been practicing all those years at just this level until the world realised. Problems from losing more cargo, other systems going down that Guyon and his half-wit reflections weren't responsible for. There was a bigger enemy out there all along, Holston. We were just kidding ourselves that we'd got it beaten. The spiders? Holston demanded immediately. All of a sudden, imagining the ship infested with some stowaways from the green planet, no matter how impossible that seemed. Lane gave him an exasperated look. Time, old man. This ship's close to 2,500 years old. Things fall apart. Time is what we're running out of. She rubbed at her face. The mannerism made her look younger, not older, as though all those extra years might just be scrubbed away. I kept thinking I'd got a lid on it. I kept going back to sleep, but there was always something else. My original crew, we tried taking it in shifts, parcelling out the time. There was just too much work. I lose track of how many generations of engineers there have been now, under my guidance. And a lot of people didn't want to go back under. Once you've seen a few failed suspension chambers. Holston shuddered. You didn't think about upload? She eyed him sidelong. Seriously? You could watch over everything forever and still stay young. But he couldn't quite say that, and he had no other way of ending the sentence. Well, apart from adding to the computer problem about 100-fold, fine, she said. But it was plain that wasn't it. And it's just that copy, the upload, over all those years, I'd have set it on a task that would include killing itself off at the end. Leave no survivors in the mainframe. And would it? Because if it wanted to live, it could sure as hell make sure I died in my sleep. And would it even remember, in the end, who was the real me? There was a haunted look on her face that told Holston she had thought long and hard about this. You don't know what it's like. When those bits of Guyon got loose, when they hijacked the comms, listening to them, even now I don't think the system's right. And the radio ghosts, mad transmissions from that fucking satellite or something, I don't know. And her shoulders slumped, the Iron Woman taking her mail off when it was just him and her. You don't know what it's been like, Holston. Be thankful. You could have woken me, he pointed out. It was not the most constructive thing to say, but he resented being cast as the lucky survivor with no choice in the matter. When you woke, you could have woken me. Her gaze was level, terrible, uncompromising. I could. And I thought of it. I came so close you wouldn't believe, when it was just me and those know-nothing kids I was trying to teach my job to. Oh, I could have had you at my beck and call, couldn't I? My personal sex toy. She laughed harshly at his expression. In and out of sleep, and in and out of me, is that it? Why? Well. Oh, grow up, old man. Abruptly, she ceased finding herself so funny. I wanted to, she said softly. I could have used you, lent on you, shared the burden with you. I'd have burned you up like a candle, old man. And for what? For this moment when I'd still be old, and you'd be dead? I wanted to spare you. I wanted to... She bit her lip. Keep you. I don't know, something like that. Perhaps knowing I wasn't putting you through this shit helped keep me going. And now? Now we had to wake you anyway. Your chamber was fucked. Irreparably, tell me. We'll find you another. Another? Seriously, now that I'm out, you go back. I have you drugged and stuffed into a pod by force if I have to. Long way to go yet, old man. And she smiled like that. A hard woman about to get brutal with whatever part of the universe stood in her way. He saw where a lot of the new lines on her face had come from. Go where? She wondered. Do what? Come on, old man, you know the plan. Guyon surely explained it to you. Holston boggled. Guyon? But you killed him. Best crew appraisal ever, she agreed mirthlessly. But his plan, yes. And he was thinking that up without realising how the ship was starting to fail. What else is there, Holston? We're it. This is us, the human race, and we've done really fucking well to make it this far against all the odds. But this piece of machinery simply cannot keep going forever. Everything wears out, old man. Even the Gilgamesh. Even me, was the unspoken thought. The green planet, Holston finished. Avrana Curran. The insects and things. So we burn them out a bit, get ourselves established. Hell, maybe we can domesticate the fuckers. Maybe you can milk a spider. If the bastards are big enough, maybe we'll be riding around on them. Or we could just poison the fucks, scrub the planet clean of them. We're humans, Holston, it's what we're good at. As for Curran, Guyon had put in most of the groundwork before. He spent generations fucking with the Gil, shielding the system from her. That old terraforming station she sent us to, it had all the toys. She can try taking over, and she can try frying us, and we'll be ready for both. And it's not like we have anywhere else to go. And as luck would have it, we're already on the way there. So it all lines up nicely.
Dragon tears.
We've got it all worked out. I reckon I'll let Cast sort out the frontier spirit end of things once we're there, she told him. I reckon I'll be ready for a rest by then. Holston said nothing, and the pause lengthened uncomfortably. She did not meet his eyes. At last the words fought themselves free. Promise me nothing, she snapped instantly. No promises. The universe promises us nothing. I extend the same to you. This is a human race, Holston. It needs me. If Guyon hadn't fucked us up so badly with his immortality scheme, then maybe things could have gone differently. But he did, and they haven't, and here we are. I'm going back to bed soon, just like you. But I'm setting my alarm early, because the next generation is going to need someone to check their maths. Then let me stay with you, Holston told her fiercely. It doesn't sound like anyone's going to need a classicist anytime soon, or at all, ever. Even Guyon only wanted me as his biographer. If you say grow old together, I'm going to thump you, Holston, Lane returned. Besides, there's still one thing you'll be needed for. One thing I need you to do. You want your life story set down for posterity? He needled, as nastily as he felt able. Yeah, you're right. I always was the funny one. So shut the fuck up. She stood up, leaning against the consoles, and he heard her joints pop and creak. Come with me, old man. Come and see the future. She led him through the cluttered, half-unmade chambers and passageways of the crew area, heading towards what he recalled were the science labs. We're going to see Vitas, he asked. Vitas, she spat. Vitas I made use of right at the start, but she's been sleeping the sleep of the not particularly trusted ever since. After all, she'd not soiled her hands with maintenance, and I've not forgotten how she was egging Guyon on all the while before. No, I'm taking you to see our cargo extension. You've put in new chambers. How? Just shut up and wait, will you? Lane paused, and he could see she was catching her breath, but trying not to show it. You'll see soon enough. In fact, he did not see when she eventually showed him. Here was one of the labs, and here, taking up much of one wall, was a specimen chamber. A great rack of little containers, hundreds of little organic samples kept on ice. Holston stared and stared, and shook his head. And then, just as Lane was about to lay into his lack of perception, he suddenly connected the dots and said, embryos. Yes, old man. The future. All the new life that our species couldn't stop itself putting out, but that we had no space to raise and bring up. As soon as some overeager girl decides she wants a family that I, in my wisdom, don't think we can afford, it's out with the surgery. Because right now I'm still hoping the human race has a future. And we're frankly still kind of short on people. I hope one day we can fire beyond. Argued, thought. against Guyon, he could have... Right then, I wasn't sure we had a future. And if Guyon had found out he was in control of the system... It's a girl, by the way. She's a girl. Will be a girl. And it was that repetition that told Holston how close to the edge Lane was now skating. I made the choice, Holston. When I was with you, I chose. I made this happen. I was going to... I thought there would be time later. I thought there would be a tomorrow when I could go back to him. Tomorrow I was waiting for him. Now I'm you're going back on the there are some perks to being reliable. First one is that I'm really short. You go on. You wake up when we hit the green planet system. You make planet call, make sure everything you've done to make that place hot. Become crazy computers or monster spiders or whatever. And you make it somewhere she can live. You hear me? You. No, Holston. This thing you get to take responsibility for. I'll have done all I can. I'll have done everything humanly possible to bring about this tomorrow. It will be down to you. After she saw him to his newly restored suspension, did he glimpse the name still tagged on the ragged shawl she aching like long, cold oblivion, with no certainty that they were it was curious and weird, Chapter 6.6 And touch the face of God. Portia wants to go out along with the rest of the crew, but Violet isn't. She is being saved for her own private happiness. Until then, Portia is to be as cosseted as humbled and sacrificial. This way up. Untoward significance from coincidence. There has been a curious anxiety about the crew, for all that those glory days of Temple are long gone. Being this much closer to the essential mystery of the messenger, and so cut off from all they know, arouses strange thoughts. At last, Viola is confident that the Skynest will coast stably in the thin air, and she liaises with radio beacons on the ground. The airplanes, mapped out crudely over the last few years, are carrying them closer to the crisis point. Portia, Fabian, Go to your station, she orders. Portia questions her respectfully, signalling with terse passes of her house that she feels the mission could be achieved single-handed as easily as it could with two. It is not a lack of faith in Fabian's abilities that moves her, but a fear for him. Males are so frail, and she feels protected. Viola indicates that everything will proceed according to the plan, and that plan calls for two of them to enter the smaller craft mounted atop the Sky Nest. The Star Nest, they call it, and it will carry them where no spider has ever been, into regions that have been the province of myth and imagination since their records began. Some small, unpiloted vessels have coasted close to that boundary. Now the scientists believe they have come to an understanding of the conditions at the very edge of the world's reach, and have planned accordingly. Portia and Fabian will have to wrestle with the truth of their beliefs, and they go as a pair in case one of them should fail. The Sky Nest is robust, able to survive the hate and turbulent weather conditions extending all over the galaxy. It is still. About the abdomen, where the air tanks are housed. At the moment it is depressurized and hangs flaccid about her, feeling surprisingly heavy, interfering with her movements and making a mumble out of her attempts to speak. On this mission, she will be reduced to pulse signals and radio. Fabian joins her, similarly caparisoned. He flicks her an encouraging gesture to keep her spirits up. He has been chosen as her second because they work well together, but also because, small even for a male, he is half her size and less than half her weight. The Star Nest has a long way to haul them. After all, the stars are very far away. Even the messenger is far away, passing across the sky far higher than the Star Nest could ever reach. Philosophical quibbles aside, there is no atmosphere there at all. The messenger is a form of life dwelling in the harshest, most life-negating environment a spider can imagine. And Portia cannot help wondering, have we silenced her by reaching as high as we are? Are we measuring legs with her by simply doing so? The crew cabin of the Star Nest is terribly cramped. The ceiling is swollen with the airship's systems. Its heater, chemical factory, transmitter, receiver, and a population of ants of limited capacity, dedicated only to keeping it all running. Portia and Fabian settle themselves as best they can, nestling into the limited give that the walls allow them. The radio pulses the instructions from Viola back in the long crew putting Portia through a long series of checks, cross-referenced with the reports of both vessels' onboard colonies that are in any event mother and daughter, which kinship aids in linking communications between the colonies. Viola signals that the crisis moment is reached. Given best estimations of air current movement, this is when the craft must separate for the Star Nest to obtain the optimum chance of success. Viola's words, transmitted as electronic pulses, strip the information of all the sender's character and personality, sound dreadfully separation. Viola starts to say something, then stills the words. Portia knows that she has just latitude and the messenger's goodwill. Such sentiments seem inappropriate just at this moment. Down on the surface, dozens of observatories and radio now its crew has affected the time to It is around this time that the messenger breaks radio silence. Portia is not tuned to God's frequency, but the tumultuous response from the ground tells her what has happened. She herself is not fluent in God's difficult, counterintuitive language, but translations come through swiftly, passing across the face of the planet as swift as thought. God has apologized. God has explained that she has previously misunderstood some key elements of the situation, but has now gained a clearer understanding of how things are. God invites questions. Portia and Fabian, locked in their tiny ascending bubble, wait anxiously to hear what will be said. They know that Bianca and her fellows on the ground must be feverishly debating what comes next. What question can possibly mark the start of this new phase of communication with the messenger? But of course, there is only one vital question. Portia wonders if Bianca will actually canvass anyone else's opinion in the end, or whether she will simply send off her own demand to God to prevent anyone else doing likewise. It must be a grand temptation to every other spider with access to a transmitter. What Bianca asks is this: what does it mean that you are there and we are here? Is there meaning, or is it random chance? Because what else does one ask, even a broken cybernetic deity? But why are we here? From her high vantage point, Dr. Avrana Kern readies herself to make full disclosure. Here is a question she can answer in more detail than all the spiders in the world could ever want. She, Avrana Kern, is history itself. She takes the equivalent of a deep breath, but no answers come to mind. She is replete with the assurance that she knows, but such confidence is not backed by the knowledge itself. The archive of data that she thinks of as my memories is unavailable. Error messages leap out when she seeks the answers. It is gone. That trove of what once was has gone. She is the only witness to a whole age of mankind, yet she has forgotten. The unused records have been overwritten in her thousands of years of sleep, in her centuries of waking. She knows, and yet in truth she does not know. All she has is a patchwork of conjecture and memories of times when she once remembered the things she can no longer recall firsthand. If she is to answer the planet, it will be with those pieces stitched together into a whole cloth. She will be giving them belated creation myths, high on dogma, but low on detail. But they are so desperate to know, and it is the right question. Would she have them ask for technical specifications or serial numbers? No, they must know the truth, as best as she can tell it. So she tells them. She asks them what they think those lights in the sky are. Those below are astronomers enough to know that they are unthinkably distant fires. They are like your sun, she says. And around one such was a world much like your own, on which other eyes looked up at those distant lights and wondered if anything looked back down. She has slipped into the past tense naturally, although her concept of a linear past is a little at odds with the spider's own concepts. Earth itself is dead to her. The creatures that lived on that world were quarrelsome and violent, and most of them strove only to kill and control and oppress each other, and resist anyone who tried to improve the lot of their fellows. But there were a few who saw further. They travelled to other stars and worlds, and when they found a world that was a little like their own, they used their technology to change it until they could live upon it. On some of these worlds, they lived, but on others, they conducted an experiment. They seeded those worlds with life and made a catalyst to quicken that life's growth. They wanted to see what would emerge. They wanted to see if that life would look back at them and understand. Something moves within what is left of Ivana Khan. Some broken mechanism she has not used for such a long, long time. But while they were waiting, the destructive and wasteful majority fought with the others, the right thinkers, and started a great war. She knows now that her audience will understand war and catalyst and the bulk of the concepts she is using. And they died. They all died. All the people of Earth, save just a few. And so, they never did come to see what grew on their new-made worlds. And she does not say it, but she thinks, and that is you. My children, it is you. You are not what we wanted, not what we planned for, but you are my experiment, and you are a success. And that jagged-edged part moves once again. And she knows that some part of it, some locked away fleshy part, is trying to win. But not from something, rather from pride. Only from pride. In her tiny, insulated world, Portia listens to what God has to say and tries to assimilate it, as other spider minds across the world must also be trying to grasp what is being said. Some of it is incomprehensible, just as so much of the messenger's message is. But this is clearer than most. God is really trying to be understood this time. She asks the next question almost simultaneously with Bianca. So you are our creator? With all the baggage that comes with it. Made why? For what purpose? And the messenger responds, you are made of my will, and you are made of the technology of that other world. But all of this has been to speed you on a path you might have taken without me, given time and opportunity. You are mine, you belong to the universe, and your purpose is whatever you choose. Your purpose is to survive and grow and prosper and to seek to understand, just as my people should have taken these things as their purpose, had they not fallen into foolishness and perished. And Portia, for all that she was never a temple goer, feels that she, as she ascends into the sparse reaches of the upper air, is fulfilling that very moment in pushing the frontier of understanding. Their ascent has been rapid. God has been long-winded. They are slowing now, and the colour of the altimeter suggests that even the tenacious stardust, which is merely a thin skin around the great mass of hydrogen from which dangles a very little weight, is reaching its speed. Out where the atmosphere is almost nothing, and therefore there is nothing for the light gas to be lighter than. They are still far, far short of the orbiting messenger, barely a third of the distance to that distant spark, but this is as far as they themselves can go. Their payload, however, is intended to go further. Deploying it is the riskiest part of a risky journey out here where no spider was ever intended to travel. Portia will be sending into orbit the first ever artificial object originating on her world. The spiders have built a satellite. It is a double-hulled glass ball containing a radio transmitter receiver and two colonies, one of hers, one of algae. The algae is a special breed cultivated by the sea-going stomatopods, designed to adjust its metabolism to regulate the proportions of the surrounding environment. It will flourish in the sunlight, expanding into the hollow silk veins that the satellite will spread, and regulated by the outside who will feed on it as well as breathe its oxygen. The satellite is a tiny biosphere, intended to last perhaps a year before falling out of balance in some way. It will act as a radio relay, and the ants can be conditioned from the ground to perform a number of analytical tasks. In respect of its capabilities, it is not revolutionary, but in what it represents, it is the dawn of a new era. It is intended to detach itself from beneath the gondola, where it has been hanging, as the single densest part of the Star Nest expedition. It has chemical rockets to push it that little step further into a stable orbit. The ants already pre-armed with the calculations they will need to adjust its trajectory as it flies. Despite their chemical expertise, the spiders have a limited ability to produce combustion-based rockets, hence the entire Skynest, Starnest project. Kern and her people never considered this, but life on the green planet is young by geological standards, too young to have produced anything in the way of fossil fuels. Biotechnology and mechanical ingenuity have had to take up the slack. The payload is not detaching. Portia registers the fact dully. She and Fabian are weathering the conditions only with difficulty. The long, cold ascent has taken a great deal out of them both. As a species, they are inefficient endotherms. By now both of them are ravenously hungry, consuming their internal food stores, yet still growing sluggish with the cold. Now something has gone wrong, and Portia must leave the crew cabin and go out into the vanishingly thin air to see if it can be rectified. The danger is increasing every moment. If it is the satellite that has malfunctioned, it may try to fire its rockets without detaching from the star nest, which would shrivel away the cabin and then ignite the hydrogen cells. Fabian informs the ground of their situation, breaking into the general babble that the messenger's revelations have sparked off. Bianca and her peers, those directly involved in the Star Nest project, quieten down rapidly. Communication is difficult. Fabian repeats himself over and over as Portia prepares her suit for exit into the hostile near space around them. The Star Nest's transmitter is having difficulties reaching as far as the planet's surface, another piece of technology creaking under the strain. Portia positions herself where she intends to exit, near the bottom of the crew cabin. She spools out a safety line attached to the cabin interior, then spins a second wall over herself, before sealing her spinnerets inside her suit. Then she cuts her way out of the cabin and into the space between the hulls. Next, repairs the rip left behind her, and then performs the same procedure again to let herself out into the killing cold beyond. Her suit inflates instantly, her internal air supply reacting to the thin atmosphere and expanding, mostly about her abdomen, mouth, eyes, and joints, those parts which might suffer from a sudden loss of pressure. Portia has several advantages over a vertebrate right now. Her open circulation is less vulnerable to frostbite and to gas bubbles caused by changes of pressure, and her exoskeleton retains fluids more readily than skin. Even so, the inflated suit reduces her movement to a crippled shuffle. Worse, she starts to heat up almost immediately. She has just been able to keep her body temperature up, but she has no ready way to bring it down. The heat that she is generating has nowhere to go, being surrounded by so little air. She begins the slow process of boiling within her own skin. She crawls painfully down to find the satellite, seeing through her filmy viewport that it is glued to the hull with ice. She has no way of communicating this to anyone, and can only hope that the payload itself is still functioning. Grimly, she begins chipping and cutting at the ice with her forelimbs. Still, the glass sphere remains anchored to the silk of the star nest. Portia is distantly aware that its rockets may trigger at any moment and will likely burn up the entire star nest before melting the ice. Even as this thought fights its way into her broiling mind, she sees the first dull glow, a mixing of chemicals giving rise to sudden heat. This is her job. This is why they chose her. She is a pioneer, a risk-taker, a spider never satisfied with simply sitting and waiting for the world to come to her. She is a hero, but one more envied than emulated. She clumsily enfolds the satellite and succeeds in finally wrenching it away from its icy holding. Bunching her rear legs, she takes aim into clear space and puts everything she has into one grand jump. She feels her suit grip about one of her rear legs, the sudden leap having been more than the stressed silk can take. The chill that now seizes the exposed limb is almost welcome. Then she is springing out and into the thin, thin air, out and arcing downwards towards the patient pull of the planet beneath them. With a spasmodic motion of 6 limbs, she throws the satellite away from her. Its rockets flare. The extreme edge of their fiery tail singes her as the satellite corkscrews madly away, under and out from the overreaching canopy of the star nest. She has no idea if it will be able to correct its course enough to make the intended orbit. In her mind arises the surprisingly rational thought, there must be an easier way than this. Then she is falling, and falling, and although her legs go through the stuttering motions of spinning a parachute, she creates nothing. Her descent comes to a sudden, jolting stop, dangling against the star nest. Her spacesuit is caught, but it doesn't matter. The air in her suit is depleted. She is too hot to move or trust. She gives herself up for lost. James is already at work by this time. He has followed very little of what has gone on, but the sudden pull on Portia's line alerts him, and follows it up, self-moving air on his right leg, until his own body pops out he can pull her up. With what feels like the last of his strength, he is able to roll her into and then uses his back to tear open both legs. He lies there on his back, limbs tonal with caution. She is not moving, save for a shallow pulsing of her abdomen. Somehow, he reaches the radio transmitter, sending a semi-incoherent report of their situation. He catches a faint confirmation that the satellite has been successfully deployed, but no indication that they have heard him. He tries again, sends gibberish with shaking pulse, and eventually manages, "Can you receive me? Can anybody receive me?" Nothing from the ground. He does not even know if the radio is working now. He is desperately hungry, and Portia's extravehicular excursions mean that they have very little air left. He has initiated venting of the hydrogen, as swift as is safe, but there is still a long way to go down. He and Portia do not have either the energy or the oxygen to reach hospitable altitudes. Then the voice comes. "Yes, I receive you." The messenger is listening. Fabian feels a religious awe. He is the first male ever to speak with God. "I understand the message," the messenger tells him. "I cannot help you. I am sorry." Fabian explains that he has a plan. It spells his scheme out again. Can you explain it? "That I can do," the messenger answers. And then, with a sudden access of old memory, "When my ancestors reached for space, there were deaths among those pioneers too. It is worth it. The next thing is salute you. He turns to Portia, who has nothing more left to give. She lies on her back, senseless, stripped of everything but her most basic reflexes. With slow, difficult movements, Fabian begins to court her. He moves his palps before her eyes and touches her as if he were seeking to mate, triggering a slow instinct that has been built over by centuries of civilization but has never quite gone away. There is no food to restore her, save one source. There is not enough air for two, but perhaps sufficient for one. He sees her fangs unclench and lift, shuddering. For a moment he contemplates them, and considers his regard for this crewmate and companion. She will never forgive him, or herself, but perhaps she will live nonetheless. He gives himself up to her automatic embrace. Later, Portia returns to consciousness aboard the Skynest, feeling gorged, damaged, strangely sensual. She has lost one rear leg entirely, and two sections of another limb, and one of her secondary eyes is out. She lives, though. When they tell her what Fabian did to secure her survival, she refuses to believe it for a long time. In the end, it is the messenger herself who brings her to an acceptance of what happened. Portia will never fly again, but she will be instrumental in planning further flights, safer and more sophisticated methods of reaching orbit. But now that the messenger has found the patience and perspective to properly understand her children, she can finally communicate how we in a way they can understand. Even the signs of their orbiting God, they are not alone. They were packed into the briefing room. It was like deja vu, but these days that seemed a good thing. Holston was a citizen of a tiny world cycling by repetitions, and where events failed to repeat themselves, it meant deterioration. Some of the lights were out, and that really brought it home. All the miracles of technology that had made the Gilgamesh possible, all the tricks they had stolen from the gods of the old empire, and right now they either couldn't get all the lights working, or there were simply too many higher priority things to be doing. He recognised a surprising number of faces. This was clearly a command meeting. These were key crew, or who was left of them. He saw the science team, a handful of engineering, command, security, all people who had got on board when Earth was still a place where humans lived. These were people who had been granted custodianship over the rest of the human race, with some notable omissions. The only department chief present, assuming the discounted Holston himself as Department of One, was Vitas, orchestrating the bleary, reasonable weapon master, ordering people according to some idiolectic system of her own. There were a handful of young faces in old shipsuits, Lane's legacy, Holston guessed. They could have passed for the mob that he remembered from so recently, but he guessed they must be at least a generation further on from that. They had persevered. They had not turned into cannibals, or anarchists, or monkeys. Even that fragile appearance of stability gave him some hope. Classicist Mason, there you are! It was hard to say what Vitas felt about seeing him present. Indeed, it was hard to say what she felt about anything. She had aged, but gracefully, and only a little, it seemed. Holston found himself indulging in the bizarre speculation that she was not human at all. Perhaps she was her own self-aware machine. Controlling the medical facilities, she would be able to hide her secret forever, after all. He had seen a lot of mad things since setting foot on the Gilgamesh, but that would have been a step too far. Even the old Empire, unless she was old Empire, some anachronistic 10,000-year survival, fusion-driven and eternal. Finding himself momentarily adrift from reason, he grasped for Vitus's hand and snagged it, feeling the human warmth, willing himself to trust his own perceptions. The scientist raised her eyebrows sardonically. "Yes, it's really me," she remarked. "Amazing, I know. Can you use a gun?" "I very much doubt it," Halston blurted out. What?" "The commander wanted me to ask that of everyone. I'd already guessed the answer in your case." Halston became cold and still all at once. The commander. Vitas watched him with dry amusement, letting him hang in suspense for a few long seconds before explaining. "Len Karst is the acting commander, for your information." "Karst?" Halston felt that was hardly better. How bad has it got that Karst gets to call the shots? There were a lot of looks from the rest of the crew at that remark, some frowning, others plainly sharing his opinion, including even one of the security team. It was a rare moment when Halston would far rather be in the minority. "We're travelling into the Khan system," Vitas explained. She turned to the console behind her, gesturing for Halston's attention. "Not to put too fine a point on it, but once we're in orbit around the green planet, the Gilgamesh's wandering days are likely to be done." The oddly poetic turn of phrase gave her clipped tones an unexpected gravitas. "Lane's tribe have done a remarkable job in keeping him together, but it really has been damage control, quite literally, and the damage has begun to win. There's quite a population of shipborne now, because the suspension chambers are failing beyond point of repair. Nobody's going to be heading off on another interstellar journey. Which means there's only one place left for us all. Yes, Vitus's smile was precise and quick. And we're going to have to fight the old empire for it. You seem to be looking forward to it," Halston observed. "It's been the goal of a long, long plan, Mason, and centuries in the making. The longest of long games in the history of our species, except for whatever that term thing is going to be. And you were right, in a way, about the commander. He's not here to see it, but it's Guyen's plan. It was so from the moment he set eyes on that planet." "Guyen?" Halston echoed. "He was a man with a vision," Vitas asserted. "He cracked under the strain at the end, but given what he'd gone through, that's hardly surprising. The human race owes him a great deal." Halston stared at her, remembering how she had treated the disastrous upload of Guyen's mind as some sort of hobby experiment. In the end, he just grunted, and something of his feelings was plainly visible on his face, judging by the scientist's reaction. "Karst and some of the tribe have jury-rigged a control center in the comms room," Vitas said, somewhat coldly. "You're key crew, so he'll want you there. Alpash?" One of the young engineers appeared at her elbow. "This is Alpash. He's shipborne," Vitas explained, as though excusing some congenital defect. "Get Mason here, and the rest of key crew up to the commander, Alpash." She spoke to the young man as though he was something less than human, something more like a pet or a machine. Alpash nodded warily at Mason. Vitas, emphatic, probably didn't expect that she would get mad. There was a distinct suspiciousness about him as he gathered up the recently broken engineers, security men. Reminded Halston of the way that Guyen's cultists had treated him. He wondered what legends of key crew had Alpash been brought up on. Over in comms, Karst looked refreshingly the same. The big security chief had been given the time to get some stubble going on his ravaged face, and he had obviously not been wheeled out much since Halston last saw him, because he had barely aged. As the surviving key crew filed in, he grinned at them, an expression equally of anticipation and strain. "Come in and find a seat, or stand, or what? Vitas, can you hear me?" "I hear." Science Chief's voice crackled and spat from an unseen speaker. "I'll continue to supervise the unpacking, but I'm listening." "Right." He turned to address them. In the next 40 minutes, there was none of the expected dislike. God, any hint that the security man had never much cared for absolutely expected there of dismissal. That was the man of action Instead, Carl screamed dwindled to a smaller but much more sincere smile. It was a look of gained care, a commonality which had been there right at the start, and was still here now. We're going to fight, the security chief told them all. We've basically got just one good chance at it. You all know the score, or you should do. There's a satellite out there that can probably rip open the gill in a blink if we give it the chance. Now, we bolted on some sort of diffusion shielding back when we were pirating that terraforming station. Some of you maybe weren't awake for that, but there's a summary in the system of the changes we made. We also hardened our computer systems so that the satellite can't just shut us down or open the airlocks, that sort of trick. We've taken every precaution, and I still reckon toe-to-toe we might be screwed. He was grinning again. But I've had some drones fitted out in the workshops. They've got shielded systems as well, and lasers that I think can burn the satellite. That's the plan, basically. Best defence is a good offence, and so on. As we come in towards our orbit, we burn the fucker up and hope it's enough. Otherwise, it's down to using the Guild's forward array, and that puts us within range of retaliation. He paused, then finished. So, you're probably wondering what the fuck I need with all of you guys, yeah? Holston cleared his throat. Well, Vitas asked me if I could use a gun. I appreciate I'm no great tactician, but if it comes to needing that against the satellite, we've probably already lost. Cast actually laughed. Yeah, well I'm planning ahead. Planning to win. Because if we don't win against the satellite, there's no point in planning anyway. So let's assume we burn it out. What next? The planet? Someone said. There was a curious ripple through the room, of hope and dread together. Cast nodded moodily. Yeah. Most of you never saw it, but believe me, it's not going to be an easy place to settle down, at least at the start. Am I right, Mason? Holston started, unexpectedly having his opinion solicited. But of course, there's just him and me who were down there on the surface. You're right, he confirmed. That's where guns come in, for those that feel they can lower themselves to use them. Cast, already pre-lowered, winched his grin up a notch. Basically, the planet's full of all sorts of beasties, spiders and bugs and all manner of shit. So, while we get ourselves set up, we're going to be burning them out too. Clearing forests, driving every wildlife, exterminating anything that looks like fun. It'll be fun. Frankly, it's the sort of thing I've been looking forward to since I first got aboard. I've got to know, and everyone will. Remember, we're key crew. Us and the chiefs of the new engineers, like Al here, it's our responsibility. We make this work. Everyone's depending on us. Think about that. When everyone, I really mean it. The Gilgamesh is all there is. He clapped his hands as though that entire speech had reinvigorated him and boosted his personal morale. Security team, whoever's got the pad with our new recruits, sort them out and get them armed, teach them which end not to look down. You lot all get to join us on the bug hunt afterwards.
Do you know?
Holston assumed that meant everyone's fool enough to say yes when Vitas had asked them if they could use a gun. Try, Cast added, then seemed to lose momentum. I won't bother telling you, as you know what you're doing. Been doing it long enough anyway. Alpash, stick close though. I want you as liaison. Tribe seemed to be the engineers, or those descendants of theirs currently keeping the ship together. A few of them still there, now bolted off, with the air of people who had found the entire proceedings boring and unnecessary, but had been aware that they should be on their best behaviour nonetheless, like children during a religious service. Right, Mason. Harlan? Holston. Right, Cast nodded, unapologetic. Something special for you, right? You actually get to do your job. The satellite's transmitting all sorts of shit, and you're the only person who might know what it's saying. Transmitting? To us? Yes, maybe. Alpash? Probably no, the young engineer confirmed. Anyway, whatever. Take Mason here and plug him in. Mason, if you can make anything out of it, let me know. Personally, I reckon it's just gone mad. Murder, Holston corrected, and although this hadn't been a joke, Cast laughed. We're all in the same boat, aren't we? He said almost fondly, glancing around at the battered confines of the Gilgamesh. All of us on the same old boat. The mask slipped, and for a second Holston was looking into the stress fractures and botched job repairs that made up Karst's overstrained soul. The man had always been a follower, and now he was in charge, the last general of the human race facing unknown odds with the highest possible stakes. His somewhat disjointed briefing now looked and rested a bit like a man fighting for his composure, and holding on to it himself. Against all expectations, Karst was coping. Calm man. Also, he might be drunk. Holston realised he couldn't tell. Alpash led him to a console, still acting as though Holston and Karst and the rest were heroes of legend brought to life, but turning out to be somewhat disappointing in the flesh. Holston wondered with professional curiosity whether amazing mysteries were enough amongst the tribe. Out the rest of people, ambient, fractious gods, trickster heroes and monsters. He had no idea how many generations had gone by since their last actual contact with anyone not born on the Gilgamesh. Since he had been about to ask, but the piece clicked into place and he knew that he wouldn't ask. Not now. Not when he had thought of Lane at last. For Lane must have died long, long ago. Had she thought of him at the end? Had she come to look into the cold stillness of his coffin, her sleeping prince, who she had never permitted to come back to her? Alpash gave a nervous cough, picking up on Holston's suddenly changed mood. The classicist scowled, waved off the man's concern. Tell me about these transmissions. With a worried look, Alpash turned to the console. The machinery looked battered, something that had been taken apart and put back together more than once. There was some sort of symbol, some graffiti stenciled on the side, which looked new. Holston stared at it for a moment before disentangling the words. Do not open. No user-serviceable parts inside. He laughed, thinking that he saw the joke, the sort of bleak humour that he recalled engineers resorting to in extremis. There was nothing on Alpash's face to suggest that he saw any humour in it, though, or that the slogan was anything other than a sacred symbol of the tribe. Abruptly, Holston felt bitter and sick again. He felt like Karst must feel. He was just a thing of the lost past, trying to recapture an almost lost future. There's a lot of it, Alpash explained. It's constant, on multiple frequencies. We can't understand any of it. I don't know what this Avronikern is, but I think the commander may be right. It sounds like madness. It's like the planet is whispering to itself. The planet? Holston queried. We're not getting these signals direct from the satellite, as far as we can understand. Now that Alpash began speaking more, Holston heard unfamiliar rhythms and inflections in his words. A little of Lane, a little of the Gilgamesh's automatic systems, a little of something new. There was obviously a shipborne accent now. Alpash brought up a numerical display that was apparently intended to be educational. You can see here what we can tell from the transmissions. Holston was used to the Gilgamesh sugarcoating that sort of data in a form that a layman could understand, but that concession was apparently not something the tribe felt it needed. Seeing his blank look, the engineer went on. Our best bet is that these are transmissions being directed at the planet, just like the original numerical sequence, and we're now catching bounce back. They're definitely coming to us by way of the planet, though.
May the departed
You had other classicists working on this, out of cargo? There must be a few students, or... Alpash looked solemn. I'm afraid not. We have searched the manifest. There were only very few at the start. You are the last. Holston stared at him for a long while, thinking through the implications of that, thinking about Earth's long history before the fall, before the ice came. His society had possessed such a fragmented, imperfect understanding of the predecessors that they were constantly trying to ape. And did even that poor record now boil down to just himself? The contents of one old man's head? All that history. And if, when, I die... It did not see anyone having time to attend history
Dear
classes,
departure.
casts,
May the
survivalist
departed.
evil. He shivered, not from the usual human sense of mortality, but from a feeling of vast, invisible things falling away into oblivion, irretrievable and irreplaceable. Grimly he turned to the messages that Alpash was now showing him. After some work, Holston finally deciphered the display enough to register just how many of the recordings there were, and these presumably just a fraction of the total. What's Karen playing at? Maybe she has gone off the deep end after all. He accessed one, but it wasn't anything like the other transmissions from the satellite which he remembered. Still, Holston felt long unused academic parts of his brain try to sit up and take notice, seeing complexity, repeated patterns. He performed whatever analysis and modelling the console allowed him. This wasn't random static, but nor was it the old Empire messages that Kern, Eliza, had used previously. Perhaps it's encrypted, he mused to himself. There's a second type as well, Alpash explained. This is how the majority go, but there are some that seem different, here. Holston listened to the chosen recording, another sequence of pulses, but this time seeming closer to what he would actually recognise as a message. Just this, though? No distress signal? No number sequences? This, and as much of this as you could want, Alpash confirmed. How much time do we have before things start? At least 30 hours. Holston nodded. Can I get something to eat? Of course. Then leave me with this, and I'll see if I can find anything for Karst. Alpash moved to go, and for a moment Holston was going to stop him, to ask him that impossible question that historians can never ask regarding the things they study. What is it like to be you? A question nobody can step far enough out of their own frame of reference to answer. With some help from the tribe, he was able to hunt through the Gilgamesh's systems for at least some of his electronic toolkit to try and unpick the messages. He was given what he wanted, then left alone to work. He had a sense that, across the ship, a great many shipborn and woken were bracing themselves for the moment their lives had been leading up to for generations, and during the sleeping centuries respectively. He was happy to be out. Here, at this failing end of time, the classicist Holston Mason was glad to be poring over some incomprehensible transmissions in a futile search for meaning. He was not Karst, nor was he Alpash or his kin. Old. I'm old, in so many ways. Old, and yet still lively enough that he was even going to outlive the Ark ship itself, by the look of things. He realised he could make nothing out of the majority of the messages. They were generally faint, and he guessed that they were being sent from the planet in all directions, just radiating out into space. Rather, bounced off the planet. Not sent. Of course not sent. He blinked, obscurely uncomfortable. Whatever their source, though, they were sufficiently far from anything he knew records of messages from the satellite and tried to treat them in the same way, varying the encoding by trial and error until something like a message had abruptly sprung out from the white noise. There had been words, or at least he had fooled himself that he had decoded words there. Imperial seed words, words out of history, the dead language given new and mutated life. He thought again about Alpash's accent. These transmissions seemed almost as if someone out there was speaking some barbarous version of application language, encoded just as Kern encoded her transmissions. Some degraded or evolved or simply corrupted the ancient tongue. She just wrote a story about it, all new. He could always forget what trouble they were all in and pretend he was on the brink of some great discovery that anyone would care about. He couldn't with it. Means if he can't drastically lost more than before, the woman and machine were half the commander, but no difference. The more he listened to the clearer those decoded transmissions, those sent directly along the line of the building shaft's process, the more he felt that someone was trying to speak to him across millions of kilometers and across a gap of comprehension that was far greater. He could even fool himself that little snippets of phrases were coming together into something resembling a coherent message. Stay away. We do not wish to fight. Go back. Winston stared at what he had. Am I just imagining this? None of it had been clear. The transmission was in foreshape and nothing about it fitted in with Alan's earlier behaviour. The more he looked, the more he became sure that this man was nothing more than a transmission. They were making him far bigger, as though by thousands of miles. He was asleep. He slept on it for a while in the end, and then shambled off to find the acting commander in the comms room. You're cutting it fine, Cast told him. I launched the drones out of that. I calculate about 2 hours before they do what they do, if it can be done at all. Burning Kern? Fucking right. Cast stared at the working screens surrounding him with haunted, desperate eyes that belied the easy grin he kept trying to keep pinned on his face. Until then, Holston, out with it. Well, it's massive and it's intended for us. That's not one of the usual effects. Reasonably certain. Fucking academics. But it was almost good-natured, even so. So Kern's down to basically bombarding us with baby talk, wanting us to go away. I can't translate most of it, but those pieces that make any sense at all seem to be consistently along that theme. In fact, he was feeling unhappy about his own efforts, as though in this, the last professional challenge of his career, he'd made some student-level error and failed. The transmissions had been in front of him, a large body of materials cross-referenced, and he had constantly felt on the edge of a breakthrough that would make it all crystal clear to him. It had never come though, and now there was no time to go back to it. He felt that he had shackled himself too much to the way the old Empire did, just as everyone always had. If he had come to those transmissions with more of an open mind, rather than trying to recast them in the shape of Kern's earlier work, what might he have found? Well, fuck it, was Cast's informed opinion. We're not going anywhere. We don't have that option anymore. It all comes down to this. Like it was all
Casey.
All right? You are.
Oh, Casey. Oh, Jesus.
Are we getting anything from the drones?
That's a spicy
I don't
fucking...
want them transmitting anything
Jesus.
until they're close enough to actually get to work. Ross said. Believe me, I remember what fucking Kern can do. You weren't in that shuttle when she just took the whole thing over, remember? Just drifting in space with nothing but life support while she worked out what she wanted to do with us. That was no fun at all, believe me. And yet she let you come down and pick us up. Holston recalled. He thought Cast might come back at him angrily for that, accuse him of going soft. But the security chief's face took on the course it had. I know, he admitted. And if I thought that there was any chance... But she's not going to let us on that planet, Holston. We tried that one, over and over. She's going to sit there and hoard the last chance with the human race, and let us all die out in space. Holston nodded. His mind was full of that hammer begging them to go away. Can I send from the ship? It might even take her attention from the drones. I don't know. No. Complete silence from us. If she's so crazy that she hasn't seen us, I don't want you cluing her in. Cast could not keep still. He checked with his seconds in security. He checked with the senior members, chiefs, of the tribe. He paced and threatened, and tried to get some passive data on the drone's progress without running the risk of alerting Kern. You really think she won't see them coming? Holston objected. Who can know? She's old, Holston, really old. Old enough by a long way. She was crazy before. Maybe she's gone completely nuts now. I'm not giving her anything more than I had to. We'll get one shot at this before it's down to the gill itself. Literally one shot. Seriously, you know how much power a diesel laser takes up? And believe me, those are our two best functioning drones. Fucking patchwork jobs from all the working bits of the farm. He clenched his fists, fighting against the weight of his responsibilities. Everything's falling apart, Holston. We've got to get on to that planet. The ship's dying. That stupid moon-based amphibians, that died. Earth, I know. Holston hunted about for some sort of reassurance, but he honestly couldn't think of anything to say. Chief, interrupted one of the tribe. Transmissions from one of the drones coming in. They're coming up on the planet, ready to deploy. At last! Holst practically shouted and stared about him. Which screen's best? Which is working? 4 screens flared with the new images, one flickering and dying, but the other 3 holding steady. They saw that familiar green orb, a thing of dreams, the promised land. The drones were following their path towards the satellite's orbital track, darting in to intercept it and bring an end to it. They didn't care about what they were seeing, unlike the human eyes now watching vicariously through their lenses. Cast's mouth hung open. At this moment, even the ability to curse seemed to have deserted him. He fumbled backwards for a seat, and then sat down heavily. Everyone in comms had stopped work, instead staring at the screen, at what had been done to their paradox. Kern's satellite was not alone in its vision. Around the circumference of the planet, girdling its equator with wall rim, was a vast band of tangled lines and strands and nodes. Not satellites, but a whole orbiting network, interconnected and continuous around the entire world. It flared bright in the sunlight, opening green petals towards the system's stars. There were thousands of irregular nodes pulled into taut, angular shapes by their connecting conduits. There was a bustle to it, of constant activity. It was alert. It was as though some unthinkable horror had begun the job of cocooning the planet before it fed on it. It was a single, vast web in geostationary orbit about the planet, and Kern's metal home was just one pinpoint within its myriad complexity. Holston thought about those thousand transmissions in Kern's world that were not from Kern herself. He thought about those hateful whispers telling Gilgamesh, impossible, to turn round and go away, abandon hope falling into an empty. The drones were arrowing in now, still seeking out Kern's satellite, because their programming had somehow not prepared them for this. Silence, said Cast slowly. His eyes were roving around, seeking desperately for inspiration. It's not possible. There was a pleading edge to his voice. Holston just stared at that vast snare laid around the planet, seeing more detail every second as the drones closed to it. He saw things moving traffic, shuffling back and forth. He saw long strands reaching out into space as though hungry for more prey. He thought he saw other ones reaching down towards the planet itself. His skin was crawling, and he remembered his brief stay on the planet, the deaths of the mutineers. No, said Cast flatly. No, again. It's ours. It's ours. We need it. I don't care what the fuck the bastards have done with it. There's nowhere else to go. What are you going to do? Holston asked faintly. We are going to fight, Cast stated. We're going to fight Kern, and we're going to fight that. We are coming home. You hear me? That's home now. It's all the home we'll ever have. And we will mass drive the fucking place from orbit if we have to make it ours. We'll burn them out. We'll burn them all out. What else have we got? He rubbed at his face. When he took his hands away, he seemed confused. Right. I need more minds on this. Outlash. It's time. The engineer nodded. Time for what? Time to wake up the lane. Chapter 7.2. What rough beast? Far beyond the physical tendrils with which they have ringed their planet, the spiders have extended a wider realm. Biotechnological receptors in the cold space hear radio messages, await the return of soundless calls into the void, and reach out for disturbances in gravity and the electromagnetic spectrum. The tremors on the strands that will let them know when a guest has arrived in their planet. They have been preparing themselves for many generations. The entire planet has, ever since they finally bridged that gap with God, fingertip to leg tip. Their entire civilization has come together as a puppet, and that puppet is the way. The messenger had forever been trying to prepare them, to mold them into her image and give them the weapons she thought they needed in order to fight back. Only when she stopped treating them like children, like monkeys, was she able to do what perhaps she should have done from the start: communicate the problem to them, let them find a solution that was within the reach of their minds and their technology. One advantage of God ceasing to move in mysterious ways is that the entire planet has found a hitherto unknown unity. Little focuses the collective mind more decisively than the threat of utter extinction. The messenger was unstinting in her assurances that the spiders would have nothing else to look forward to if the Gilgamesh were allowed to return unharmed. She had racked her piecemeal recollection of her species' history and found only a hierarchy of destruction, of her species devastating the fauna of planet Earth, and then turning on its own sibling offshoots, and then at last, when no other suitable opportunities remained, tearing itself. Mankind brooks no competitors, she was explaining, not even its own reflection. For generations, then, a political unity of the spider cities has worked towards creating this vast orbital presence, using all the tools available. The spiders have entered the space age with desperate haste. And Bianca looks up at the darkening sky, at the unseen filigree of great star nest, the orbital city, and knows that she would rather it did not come about in her lifetime. The enemy is coming. She has never seen this enemy, but she knows what it looks like. She has sought out ancient understandings, preserved across the centuries, that reach back to a time when her kind faced extinction at the jaws of a much more comprehensible war. But during their conquest of the ant superhive, Bianca's species encountered what she now knows as humanity. There were giants in the world back in those days. She now sees, through the long-gone eyes of a distant ancestor, a captive monster that had fallen from the sky, not from the messenger, as had been believed, but from this approaching menace. Little did they know, it was a herald of the end. It seems so hard to believe that such a huge, ponderous thing could have been sentient, but apparently it was. More than sentient. Things like that, just as the messenger had once been a thing like that, are the race, the ancient astronauts responsible for all life that had evolved on Bianca's world, and now they are returning to undo that mistake. Bianca's musings have taken her out of the vast reach of the Seven Trees combination, and onto the closest anchors, travelling swiftly by wire in a capsule powered by artificial, photosynthetic, self-sufficient muscle. Now she disembarks, feeling the great open space around her. Most of her world's tropical and temperate land area is still forested, either for agricultural purposes as wild reserves, or serving as the scaffolding that her species use to build their cities. The areas around the elevator anchor are all kept clear, and she sees a great tent of silken walls 100 feet high, culminating in a single point that stretches ever away into the high distance, beyond the ability of her eyes to follow it. She knows where it goes, though, heading up, out of the planet's atmosphere, then up further and further, as a slender thread that reaches halfway to the arc of the moon. The equator is studded with them. That long ago balloonist was right. There was an easier way to claw one's way up and out of the planet's gravity well, and into orbit, and all it took was spinning a strong enough thread. Bianca meets with her assistants, a subdued band of 5 females and 2 males, and they hurry inside to another capsule, this one moving by little more than simple mechanical principles utilised on a grand scale. Unimaginably far away is a comparable boat, even now descending inwards towards the planet's surface. By exercise of the sort of mathematics that Bianca's species has been fluent in for centuries, Bianca's own car begins its long, long ascent. She is the general, the tactician. She is going to take her place amidst the bustling community known as Great Star Nest, to mastermind the defence of her planet against the alien invaders, the Star Gods. She has ultimate responsibility for the survival of her species. A great many better minds than hers have formulated the plan that she will attempt to carry out, but it will be her own decisions that will make the difference between success and failure. The journey up is a long one, and Bianca has plenty of time to reflect. The enemy they face is the trial of a technology she cannot conceive of, advanced beyond the dreams of her own time's greatest scientists, using a technology of metal and fire and lighting, all fit tools for vengeful dead. At her disposal is fragile silk, biochemistry and symbiosis, and the valour of all those who put their lives at her disposal. Betty, who spins and destroys, as she and her fellows are hauled towards the open darkness of space, and the gleaming grid of her people's greatest architectural triumph. Already in orbit on the globe-spanning 3-dimensional sculpture they think of as Great Star Nest, Portia is steeling herself for a fight. The great equatorial web is studded with hangings that trail out from one another, interconnect, are spun up or taken down. It has become a way of life for the spiders, and one they've taken to remarkably quickly. They are a species that is well made for a life of constant freefall around the planet. They are born to climb and to orient themselves in 3 dimensions. Their rear legs give them a powerful capacity to jump to places that their keen eyes and minds can target precisely, and if they get it wrong, they always have a safety line. In a curious way, the old cumbersome spacesuits which once took those pioneering balloonists to the outer reaches of the atmosphere are things of the past now. Portia and her squad traverse the lattice-strung vacuum quickly and efficiently, setting out on manoeuvres to ready themselves for the coming conflict. They carry most of their suit about their abdomens, booklines fed by an air supply that is chemically generated as needed, rather than stored in tanks. With their training and their technology, and their relatively undemanding metabolisms, they can stay out in raw space for days. A chemical heating pack is secured beneath their bodies, along with a compact radio. A lensed mask protects their eyes and mouths. At the tip of each abdomen, their spinnerets connect to a little silk factory, spinning chemical silk that forms strands, formidably strong strands, in the airless void. Lastly, they have packs of propellant with adjustable nozzles to guide their silent flight in the void. Their exoskeletons have been coated in a transparent film, a single molecule thick, which prevents any decompression or moisture loss without diminishing much in the way of feeling. The tips of their legs are sheathed in insulating articulated sleeves to guard them from heat loss. They are the complete astronaut soldiers. As they cross from line to line, judging each leap they're slow and agile and utter. The enemy is coming. many. Spiders have done what they could for generations around us. Best technological they will die. She has heard that Bianca is on her way up. Everyone is glad, of course, that the commander of their global defence will be up here alongside them. But the simple fact that their leader is on her way brings it home to all of them. The time is finally here. The battle for tomorrow is beginning. If they lose, then there will be no future for them. And with that severed tomorrow, all their yesterdays will be undone as well. The universe will turn, but it will be as though they had never existed. Portia knows that the great minds of her species have considered many diverse weapons and plans. She must take it on faith that the strategy she has now been given is the best, the most achievable and the most acceptable. She and her squad gather, watching other bands of soldiers surge and spring across distant sections of the webbing. Her eyes stray to the high heavens. There is a new star above now, and it foretells a time of terrible cataclysm and destruction simply by its appearance. There is no superstitious astrology in such predictions. The end times are truly here, the moment when one great cycle of history grinds inexorably into the next. The humans are coming. Chapter 7.3 Maiden, Mother, Crone. What do you mean, Wake Lane? Karst and Alpash turned to Holston, trying to read his suddenly agonized expression. What it sounds like, the security chief replied, baffled. She's alive? Holston's fingers crooked, fighting the urge to grab one or other of them and shake. Why didn't you? Why only wake her up now? Why isn't she in charge? Karst obviously took issue with that, but Alpash stepped in quickly. To wake grandmother is not something to be done lightly, by her own orders. Only in matters of emergency, she said. She told us when I next wake, I want to walk upon a green planet. She told you that, did she? Holston demanded. She told my mother, when she was very young, the engineer replied, meeting the classicist's challenging stare easily. But it is recorded. We have records of many of Grandmother's later pronouncements. He bent over a console, calling up a display that shuddered patchily. But we should go now. Commander? Yeah, well, I'll hold the fort here, shall I? Cast said, plainly still smarting somewhat. You get the woman up and on her feet, and then loop to me. Give her the situation and tell her that Vitas and I need to touch heads with her. Alpash headed off into the ship, away from key crew, and most of the living areas that Holston was familiar with. The classicist hurried after him, not much wanting to be left with Cast, still less wanting to get lost within the flickering, ravaged spaces of the Gilgamesh. Everywhere told the same story of slow autolysis, a cannibalism of the self, as less important parts and systems were ripped out to fix higher priority problems. Walls were laid open, the ship's bones exposed. Screens flared static, or else were dark as wells. Here and there huddled small pockets of the tribe, still about the essential business of keeping the ship running, despite the immediate crisis, their heads close together like priests murmuring doctrine. How do you even know how to fix the ship? Holston asked of Alpash's back. It's been, I don't know how long it's been. Since Guyen died, even. I don't know. And you think you can still keep the ship running? Just by, what do you... You're learning how to make a spaceship run by rote, or... Alpash looked back at him, frowning. Don't think I don't know what the commander means when he says, tribe. The chief scientist, too. It pleases them to think of us as primitives, inferiors. We, in turn, are bound to respect your authority as our precursors. That is what our grandmother laid down. That is one of our laws. But we do nothing by rote. We learn, all of us, from our youngest age. We have preserved manuals and lectures and tutorial models. Our grandmother has provided for us. Do you think we could do all we have done if we did not understand? He stopped, clearly angry. Holston had obviously touched a nerve already rubbed raw by the other key crew. We are in the line of those who gave their lives, all of their lives, to preserve this vessel. That was and is our task, one to be undertaken without reward or hope of relief. An endless round of custodianship until we reach the planet we were promised. My parents, their parents, and theirs, all of them have done nothing but ensure that you, and all the other cargo of this ship, shall live, or as much of them as we could save. And it pleases you to call us tribe, and consider us children and savages, because we never saw Earth. Winston held his hands up appeasingly. I'm sorry. You've taken this up with Karst? I mean, he's kind of depending on you. You can make demands. Alpash's look was incredulous. At this time, the future of our home, our old home and our new, hanging in the balance, would you say that was a good time for us to start arguing amongst ourselves? For a moment, Holston studied the young man as though he was some completely new species of hominid, separated by a The feeling passed, and he shook himself. She did well when she set down her laws. Thank you. Alpash apparently took this as a validation of his entire culture, or whatever it was that had developed amongst his weird, claustrophobic society. And now at last, I get to meet her, here at the end of everything. They passed on through a wide-open space that Holston suddenly recognised, remembrance coming to him halfway across it, looking at the raised stage at one end, where stubs of broken machinery still jutted. Here, Guyen had stood and made his bid for eternity. Here, the earliest progenitors of Alpash's line had fought alongside their warrior queen and Karst's security team, some of whom were surely recently reawakened, possessing living memories of events that for Alpash must be song and story in a weirdly twisted legend. A lone screen hung at an angle above the torn-up roots of the upload facility, flickering malevolently with scattered patterns, as though Guyon's ghost is still trusted. Almost immediately, he thought he did see, or a broken mirror, the rage-torn face of the old commander and the flurrying striations of the screen. Or perhaps it was one of Rana Cannon's old features. Shuddering, he hurried on after outrage. The place he ended up in had been a storeroom, he guessed. Now there was stored only one thing, a single suspension chamber. At the foot of the pedestal was a huddle of little objects, icons heat moulded in plastic into an approximation of the female form, offerings from her surrogate children and their children to the guardian mother of the human race. Above that desperate little display of hope and faith were tacked little scraps of cloth torn from ship suits, each bearing some close-written message. This was a shrine to a living goddess. Not only living, but awake. Alpash and a couple of other young engineers were standing back respectfully while Lisa Lane found her balance, leaning on a metal spar. She was very frail, her earlier heaviness eaten away from her frame, leaving skin that was bagged and wrinkled and hung from her bones. Her near-bald scalp was mottled with liver spots, and her hands were like birds' claws, almost fleshless. She stood with a pronounced hunch, enough that Holston wondered if they'd altered the suspension chamber to let her sleep out the ages lying on her side. When she looked up at him, though, her eyes were Lane's eyes, clear and sharp and sardonic. If she had said then, "Hello, old man," like she used to, he was not sure that he could have borne it. She just nodded, however, as though nothing was to be more expected than to find Holston Mason standing there, looking young enough to be her son. "Stop your bloody staring," she snapped a moment later. "You don't look such a picture yourself. What's your excuse?" "Lane." He approached her carefully, as though even a strong movement of air might blow her away. "No time for romance now, lover boy," she said dryly. "My air cast's fucked up and we've got the human race to save." And then she was in his arms, and he felt that fragile, thin-boned frame, felt her shaking suddenly as she fought the memories and the emotions. "Get off me, you oaf!" And she made no move to push him away. "Don't be too hard on Karst," Holston cautioned her. "The situation is unprecedented." "I'll be the judge of that." At last she shook him up. "I swear, sometimes I think I'm the only competent person left in the whole human race. I think that's the only thing keeping me going." She managed to stride past him, but stumbled almost immediately, and her next step was decidedly less ambitious. "Never grow old," she whispered. "Never grow old and then go into suspension, that's for sure. Dream young dreams. Forget that you're coming back. Fucking believe me. You don't dream suspension." "Look at you, the fucking expert," she glowered. "Or am I not allowed to swear now? I suppose you expect some sort of fucking decorum." Behind her defiance, there was a terrible desperation. A woman who had always been able to simply physically impose her will on the world, who now had to ask it permission, and the permission of her own body. Holston brought her up to date with developments on the way back to join Karst. He could see her determinedly fitting each piece into place, and she wasn't slow to stop him and ask for clarification. "These transmissions, do we reckon they're actually from the planet then?" "I have no idea. It explains why most of us hate them constantly. It doesn't explain lift off with South Imperial Sea, so maybe that is Kern. We tried talking to Kern. I think Karst was planning everything on mounting a sneak attack. How subtle of him, she spat. I reckon now's about the time to talk to Kern, don't you? In fact, go do it now. Just get on with it. When we hit comms, I'll talk guns with Karst. You can talk whatever fuck with her. Find out what she's saying. Maybe she doesn't actually like spiders crawling all over her. Maybe she's an ally now. You never know until you ask. She had so much of her old sense of purpose still clinging to her, with the touch of once magnetic bone, that Holston was considerably heartened up until the moment that she reached comms and saw what warnings were transmitting. Then Lane stopped in the hatchway and stared, exactly as the guard was all the rest of them. For a moment, all eyes were fixed on her, and if she had declared it all a lost cause, there might have been nobody else willing to take up the baton. But she was lame. She endured and she fought. And the satellites, the spiders, the time itself. Ah! And then repeated a few more times, as if taking strength from the word. Holston, get on the comms to Kern. Karst, get Vetus over here, and then you can start telling me what the fuck we can do about that mess. With the comms at his disposal, or at least after Alpash had explained half a dozen workarounds the engineers had come up with to deal with system instability, Holston wondered what he could possibly send. He had the satellite's frequency, but the space around the planet was alive with whispering ghosts, those faint transmissions that were, he had to admit now, not just signals from the satellite bouncing off the planet below it. He tried to feel some sort of awe about that, and about the unprecedented position that he was in. The only emotion he could muster was a worn-out dread. He began to assemble a message in his impeccable Imperial Sea, the dead language that looked to be about to survive the human race. This is the Ark ship Gilgamesh, calling for Dr. Avrana Kern. He stumbled over, do you require assistance? His mind thronging with inappropriate possibilities. Dr. Kern, he took a deep breath. This is the Ark ship Gilgamesh calling Dr. Avrana Kern. He finished. She knew them, and they knew her. They were old adversaries after all. We are now without any option but to land on your planet. The survival of the human race is at stake. Please confirm that you will not impede us. It was a wretched plea. He knew that, even as he let the message fly off at the speed of light towards the planet. What could Kern say that would satisfy them? What could he say that would dissuade her from her monomaniacal purpose? Vetus had arrived by then, and she, Karst, and Lane had their heads close together, discussing the important stuff, whilst Holston was left babbling into the void. Then a reply arrived, or something like it. It was sent from the point in the web that Karst had figured to be the satellite, and it was far stronger than the feeble transmissions he had been analysing before. There seemed little doubt that it was directed at and intended for the Gilgamesh. If it was Kern, it seemed she was long gone. It was not her crisp, antique speech, but more of the weird, almost imperial, that he had caught before. A jumble of nonsense and letter strings that looked like words but weren't, and in the midst of them all, a few words, and what might even be sentence fragments, like an illiterate aping writing from memory. An illiterate with access to a radio, and the ability to encode a signal. He resent his signal, asking for Eliza this time. What was there to lose? The return was more of the same. He contrasted it with its predecessor. New ones, and by now his professional eye was seeing certain recurring patterns in those sections he could not interpret.
The divine realm. Lord Ishin, what happened?
Lord Ishin has succumbed to his illness and passed away.
I see.
I'm sure you sensed it. The Central Forces have taken this opportunity to attack the castle.
And the Divine Heir?
Here.
This key. My lord has escaped the castle through the secret passage?
Yes, Master Wolf. The secret passage can be found along the moat in the Ashina Reservoir, not far from the Moonview Tower. Lord Kuro escaped the castle through that secret passage and should be waiting for you in the Silvergrass Field.
Understood.
The Nightjar have left smoke signals on the roofs. Under Lord Ishin's orders, the smoke should lead the way to Lord Kuro. Lord Kuro is the secret. He's the night the smoke.
What about you?
For the time, I will remain. Please, go to Lord Kuro.
Here to put. May the depart.
everyone, but nobody would put their life on the line. All right? So, how do I make my escape? Oh, what?